Hey, what's up? It's Wilsford back with Abysmal Hymns and Reza Mills. Joins me again as we continue on our time travel, moving forward in time, this time to 1995. We did 85 last week, 1975, the year before, 1995. Seems like it's the last really solid year for music as I was jumping ahead to 2005, and whoa, that was rough. So let's be grateful. And that's one of the things you don't realize how good you had it until you start really delving into some of this. And this one was certainly a blast for the past, where some of these albums have a profound appreciation of, but maybe three of them I listen to voluntarily a lot on my top five from 95. But yeah, it was definitely a better year for music as a whole. What are your thoughts on 95?
Yeah, again, it's kind of a strange year in some ways because obviously hardcore by this stage, if it was fading in 85, it was pretty much dead and gone, at least in its an original incarnation. And this was the time when there was some really, I'm really sorry to say, apologies if you like any of these bands, by the way, but it was a time of No Effects and Lagwagon and all of that sort of shit and the Fat Records thing and Epitaph Records. And I respect of the Offspring, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. So hardcore definitely gone on the wane a little bit. And of course, if you're in the UK, unfortunately, Britpop was ubiquitous everywhere. So we had all that sort of, Oasis, Blur, Suede, all of that kind of stuff, which, I was listening to Faith No More. That just wasn't my scene in any way, shape, or form. On the other hand, Stoner Rock was coming through, Doom, if you like. That was kind of coming through slowly. Had some cool indie stuff. And yeah, I think there was some. I tried to pull through five releases that mean the most to me that happened to come in that year. So, it'll be interesting to see where you land and where I land.
Right. There'll probably be a little bit of at least a couple albums I can see is possibly overlap.
Mm,
Really only one on mine that I super consider metal.
sure.
One band that's kind of was riding the line, another band that uses it as a dynamic. One kind of Britpop band.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so
Speak of the devil.
yeah, so I'll start off with that
All
one.
right.
It is a band that's huge
Mm,
now and kind of transcended the Britpop label, but they would fall into that, I guess, to some extent. I can kind of see them. There's, not you can connect the dots between these guys and bands like Blur pretty easy.
yeah.
And it's The Bends by Radiohead.
Yeah, I thought so. Cool. All right. Yeah.
And I think, this is part of the progression though. Because if you
Mm,
think of Pablo Honey,
yeah.
um, well, very much still in line with where MTV was at the time. This album, we're starting to get it's a better sound. We're starting to like Tom York is really starting to sing. That song Fake Plastic Trees is probably the standout here, but
Hmm.
it's an easy connect from where they went from here to OK Computer.
Yeah.
Ultimately, although I love OK Computer, I think it's when they gave the middle finger to the record labels and went off and really got experimental. That's kind of my favorite era for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this album definitely stands the test of time.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Pablo Honey, I always sort of thought of that record as kind of a little bit Smashing Pumpkins-esque, mixed in with the Pixies a little bit. And I feel like this is the record, The Bends. And used to have a flatmate who played it endlessly along with OK Computer. And I almost feel like, yeah, this is the kind of the album where they were really starting to forge their own identity. It was certainly a lot stronger than that aforementioned record. And it was huge. I mean, it was absolutely huge. I'm sure there's a program in the UK called Jules Holland,
Hmm.
uh, where I'm sure they featured on that as well, as did Metallica and loads of people. So they were certainly in the public consciousness by this point for sure. And yeah, I mean, kind of Britpoppy, but it was kind of without the laddishness. There was no sort of nods to the Kinks or the Beatles or anything like that here. It was
Right.
a little bit more original, a bit heavier, dare I say.
More
Um,
like Pink Floyd,
yeah, yeah, that's a good
at least
comparison.
headed in that direction. Like this was their Wish You Were Here,
Yeah.
where they would get into the wall with OK Computer.
Mm. Yeah, good shout. Yeah. And they still have some of that grungy sound, but it's not grunge as we know it. I mean, this is hardly Mudhoney, you know.
Right.
It's obviously just a little bit heavy. As again, always felt for me like they were slightly, as I said before, along the lines of the Smashing Pumpkins for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they got quite a divisive vocalist as well, whose voice you either dig or you don't.
Right.
So yeah, no,
And I
top
think
album.
too, it's like we had talked about last time, how the 5 years, you're kind of seeing one trend diminish and it's starting to go head to where we're going to be in the 2000s. You can hear that here, like, you know.
Mm,
All right, what you
yeah.
got?
All right, man. So I've got slightly different direction. This is one of the most intriguing artists that I think I've come across. I'm talking about Björk and her album Post. And for those who don't know, Björk, I mean, she was performing since she was about 12 years old. And she was in bands. I'm trying to remember what the name was. My
Sugar
terrible
cubes.
pronunciation. Yeah, Sugar Cubes, of course. But then she was in a band called Kukul, who were like this weird post-punk band who was signed to Crass Records, and another band called Tapi Tikaras, who again in that sort of weird experimental vein. But yeah, you're right. She didn't really start to get on the radar till Sugar Cubes, and this was her sophomore record followed debut from the year before, and I think a far more interesting record, although I do like that one. And for me, one of the songs of the 90s was definitely Army of Me, which of course Helmet do a fantastic cover of. And also yes, the only time she'd go in this direction, so there's a song on there called It's So So Quiet, which I mean, it could be like fucking Julie Andrews or something. It's kind of this weird sort of show tuney. It's kind of silly, but you can always, what's that phrase? Expect the unexpected from Bjork. Very trip hoppy, very experimental. And I think this is her proper debut, no pun intended. And definitely one of my favorite releases by her.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a great album. We feel like that whole like electro. Remember when it was called electro, where we had like electronic music that was made with instruments and there were like songwriters and it
Hmm.
wasn't a DJ and there were no real computers involved and that well this kind of epitomizes that whole
Yeah.
scene. Because
Well,
even
yeah.
Portishead would kind of, they were in that phase where I remember electronic music wasn't necessarily as divided. Like now you have people that just listen to electronic music or people that listen to music with instruments. There's not as much crossover.
No, and and interesting, you bring up Portishead, and that brings in trip hop, and I think Tricky actually worked on this record with Bjork, and I think they were dating at the time too. Bit of pointless celebrity trivia, but they were, an item at one stage, and his influence definitely comes across on this record. And if anyone's listening, check out Tricky as well. He's ace, really,
Yeah,
really.
the album from this era would have been, for me, it would have been Post-Millennial Tension.
Oh yeah,
That was
definitely.
that was a good one. And I mean, obviously, from when we get into trip hop, I mean, Massive Attack was huge in the 90s.
Mm.
So
Oh yeah,
that too.
absolutely. Cool.
All right. So I guess I will go the completely other direction from Bjork. This album, it was the end of a era for these guys. But yeah, I think it opened up the door for death metal bands to go in different directions. and it sounds incredible. It sounded totally evil when it came out, and the songwriting is like chef's kiss. It is Domination by Morbid Angel.
Oh, nice. Yeah, is that the last one with
David
Vincent?
Vincent, yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before
Cool.
he would come back and make a KMFDM album with them. And yeah, I mean it's just like Where the Slime Live. To me, there's a lot of death metal bands that are still doing it, but how
Mhm.
many of them can you like say, oh yeah, well that great song Where the Slime Lives, that has like carried on like 30 years later.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think there was definitely a songwriting element in what they were doing that kind of prevailed.
Yeah, I mean, I love Morbid Angel, and I'm someone who's known for not really being into death metal, but there's just something about the way they write, something about how do you pronounce his surname? Trey Asrigoth, is it?
Mhm.
His riffing is just really off the chain, and Pete Sandoval. I mean, if there is not a poor member of that band, and they are outstanding. And I even like the Steve Tucker years as well. I think they get a little bit overlooked, but
Yeah, they've made some good stuff. It's like it took me years to accept them without David Vincent.
sure.
But I did when I go back and listen to those Morbid Angel albums. I like them, and I've seen them with Steve Tucker a couple times at least.
You didn't see him when they did that horrible record, did you? You know, the infamous one from about
No, so I've
11.
seen. I didn't have to because I'd already seen them with
Oh, good.
David Vincent. I think so. The first time I saw them was on the Blessed of the Sick tour.
Oh,
I
wow.
saw them a
Okay.
couple of times on Covenant, and then a couple times I think on this tour.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah,
No,
so I
I
probably
imagine
saw
they
them
were
eight
pretty
times
damn
before.
good. I imagine they were pretty good.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And his
Sweet.
voice, cuts through. And one thing I like is you can always understand his lyrics, even though he's growling. You can understand the lyrics, and that
That's
kind of punches the point of there's some articulation.
well, and you made a really good point there that I guess part of the reason that I've always kind of had a problem with the genre is just it just especially these days, almost feel like there's a very robotic feel. It feels very bland and yeah, okay, great. Everyone's trying to go as fast as possible. There seems to be a little bit more artistry with Morbid Angel and with the lyrics, and they seem a little bit more imaginative than well, certainly some of the newer bands, although I can't vouch for everyone, of course. But yeah, that's why I've always been attracted to them.
Yeah, I
So,
mean they definitely I think they're probably the most important death metal band in my opinion. But
all right, good, nice one, man. Well, let's keep it heavy, albeit slightly different. I've gone black metal, and I've gone for Ulver. And again, I'm notorious for my appalling pronunciation. I believe it's pronounced Bugtat. And I'm not even going to try and read the rest of that title. It would just sound ridiculous. But basically, it translates to I think it's something to do with folklore. My internet works. Oh, yeah, here we go. Spellbound, a fairy tale in 5 chapters. So there's a catchy title. Um, it's the first of the 3 black metal albums that they would do. So they did like a trilogy. And I love what they do. They're very atmospheric. They incorporate a little bit of folk music. Unlike sort of, say, Mayhem and Dark Throne, they don't get into the whole anti-Christian thing. It feels a little bit more inspired by folk tales and and people such as Ludwig Holberg and Thomas Kingo. So even from the off in their early days, they seemed a little bit more thoughtful and a little bit more interesting. Later on, of course, they would go in a totally different direction and collaborating with Sun O and dipping into trip hop and electronica and all sorts of weird and wonderful sounds. But this was the starting point. And if you want something a little bit different, a bit more atmospheric from black metal, I definitely recommend Bugtat. It's just, yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
yeah, I mean I like all their stuff. I prefer when Greg is singing.
Yeah.
And as that came on the later albums, I think I like their dark wave stuff the best,
Sure.
surprisingly. Not
Yeah, I like
surprising.
that as well. Yeah.
But yeah, um, I think you're definitely right. They do have some more depth than a band like Dark Throne, which is more like punk,
Sure.
you know.
And I like Dark Throne a lot, but sometimes I just need a little bit more subtlety, and I think these guys deliver in that respect.
Right, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was working at a record store when that album came out. And I think I listened to it once. It's just, I wasn't ready for it yet. That was one. I mean, I was listening to Morbid Angel and Deicide, so I had not
Oh,
quite hopped on into black metal that wasn't Merciful Fate and, the stuff that we already covered.
sure.
Um, so yeah, so there was that's the thing. It was another weird transitional time because you got to think black metal in 1995.
Mm.
We all know what it is now, but in 1995, it was still pretty underground.
It was, yeah, and I'm guessing it was a kind of around the time that Varg was starting his well, quote unquote life sentence. Um, so it definitely marked a shift away from that. That's for sure. At least they weren't killing people.
Right. And yeah, I mean, they did that aside from that like Krang article, there
Yeah,
wasn't a lot. Black metal was not getting much press at all. Like
no.
the back page of like Metal Maniacs magazine or something.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's just good to have a band like Ulver that would just, not just out there to shock, but also there to make you think. So,
Cool. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and drop a big one for me. Um, because the other two albums are kind of variations of derivative from this band a little bit.
mhm.
Um, and it's probably the album I listened to the most in 1995. And I saw them on tour for this album. I want to say that Limp Bizkit opened up, but I fortunately got there late. Um, but it's King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime by Faith No More.
Yep.
Which, I think like if you want to hear who started new metal,
Mm,
obviously Angel Dust preceded this one, but on some of the heavier songs like Hookah for Kaka,
yep.
um, and Ugly in the Morning, you can hear how they kind of established that formula for the repetitive break stuff breakdowns. And
Yeah.
and Mike Patton sounds great, of course. It's
Yep.
not quite as chaotic as it's a little more streamlined. Um, Also, it's an album without Jim Martin on it.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's kind of where and I remember I think the first single I want to say was What a Day. I was unsure. It was a little more straightforward at first. And there are some more straightforward moments that kind of blended in with where music was at, but enough to you know, keep you guessing.
Yeah, it's an interesting record. I was kind of umming and ahhing whether to include it or not. For me, I like it. I think there are some fantastic songs on there. My minor complaint about it would be I feel like maybe there are too many songs. I feel like there's a couple of filler tracks. Like I never need to hear "Take This Bottle" ever again. I
Hmm.
just find that really plodding and boring, and that's not something I think about with Faith No More very often. So there's a couple of tracks that I thought were slightly less essential, but they could have lost two or three tracks. But for the main part, I agree. I really liked Evidence. The two, Ugly in the Morning and the other one. And yeah, Dig in the Grave, of course, which was the big single from it. And you're right, Roddy has less of an influence on this particular record, which might be missing, some could argue. Um, but otherwise, yeah, I definitely dig the majority of it for sure.
And I always thought of Take This Bottle as being like the prequel to the song RV from Angel Dust. It seems like that's the same character.
Yeah, ish,
He hadn't
yeah.
gotten around to hanging himself in the shower yet, so
Yeah, I mean, what's the one with there's like a big gospel choir. I mean, that's a really good tune.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking
Just a man,
about.
like a man, or something
Yeah.
like that. I really like that. That was quite an interesting track. Um, yeah, I mean, I have to say, personally, I preferred Album of the Year, but um, this is certainly a different record for them. Um, and yeah, there's still some cracking tunes on it. So,
Right.
as you expect,
I think album of the year definitely was them doing more of their own thing than here, where they were kind of fitting a little more into where rock music was already at.
sure. Yeah, I can see that. Cool. Okay, man. Nice one. So I will go, and I'm sure we've mentioned these on the show before. I can't even remember now, but I've gone with Quicksand and Manic Compression. Um, so this was their second album, and I have memories of this because I remember in the early 2000s, I was living in Edinburgh for about a year, and I was doing bloody awful agency work, like, filling in as a kitchen porter. And I remember it was a really rainy, cold, oh, I can't remember, October morning, and I was on the bus and I had this record playing. And so it's permanently wedged in my consciousness as a result, reminds me of that time. And it sort of got me through actually those times. I feel like it's a little bit more aggressive than Slip, which was kind of sludgier. And it had also a guy called Wharton Tears co-producing, and he famously worked with Biohazard on Urban Discipline. So he had some kind of pedigree in the New York hardcore slash post-hardcore world. And as well, of course, Don Fury as well, who's somewhat legendary. And Thorn in My Side is probably the best known track on here. It's a lot, I think it's just a lot punchier than Slip. Not saying it's necessarily better, but it felt like a necessary continuation. And it was, in fact, the last album they would do for about 20 odd years.
Mhm.
So, yeah, at that time, it was a pretty decent way to finish that period. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah, I
it.
can see that. Like, Slip to me has a little bit more groove to it.
Yeah.
Where this is denser and more hardcore.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And Walter, on form as always. I always sensed, and the other point was that there was always a kind of a tension between the band members. I don't know if they necessarily always got on, and you can really sense that on this record. And it wouldn't be by total accident that they would break up the following year or the following couple of years, and then he would go on to rival schools and however many other countless projects he would be in. So yeah, definitely a sense of tension there too, as far as I'm concerned.
Cool, yeah, I can see that for sure.
Cool.
Um, all right. Well, I guess I will pick up with that quicksand thread, and because this band had a member of quicksand in them for a minute. It is Adrenaline by the Deftones. And
Very
yeah, I mean, to me, this is like if you were gonna lay all the new metal bands out at the time and say which ones are gonna survive when the bandwagon stops, I would have even before Around the Fur came out, I would have said this one just
Mm,
because there is, they kept the rapping to a minimum.
yeah,
It doesn't happen, but you know, it's not the focal point. You can hear there's a lot of Bad Brains influence in what they were doing, you know,
so
and it's darker and seems to be coming from a less like there's a weird thing to new metal where it felt like that they were like some of the bands were like dramatizing their trauma and like acting like
mm,
children and
dare I say two words, last resort.
right. um
Jesus.
I mean you
Yeah,
can even hear it in like the first Korn album,
yeah.
whenever they're crying about their mommy.
Yeah.
Um,
Or daddy.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh.
yeah, so there's that, and yeah, the songs are there. I mean, they came from the hardcore scene, Deftones,
Mm.
and more so than like, even though the first time I saw Korn, they were opening up for Sick of It All. Um, you could see the connections a little more. I saw so the Deftones. I've got I think it was Chino that handed me the two-song tape that they had when they played. They opened up, so I'm opening up for Monster Magnet,
Oh wow. Oh,
and it was in like a really small club with nobody there.
that's
And
quite a lineup. I can't even imagine that
I
now.
think Barr
Deftones,
was the
a
middle
Monster
band.
Magnet.
Yeah, I think it
Wow.
was Deftones. I want to say it was maybe not. No, it was Deftones, Sugar Ray, and
Oh,
Monster Magnet.
okay. Well, less about Sugar Ray, the better. But yeah, the two solid bands there.
Yeah. No, I saw him again. I saw Monster Magnet again, and I think Barr opened up for him. But yeah, I mean, it's a great band. Deftones obviously, have some staying power, which is they're
Yeah.
even more popular now than they were then. So,
I agree. And, for a first album, it was pretty damn impressive. I they're one of those bands that I dip into now and again, although I do like them. And of course they would only get better and better. But I tell you what, I'm guessing they were probably in their early to mid 20s at this point.
mhm.
And what a solid debut, it's certainly, I would say, maybe their heaviest moment. Um, because obviously they'll get a lot more textured later on. And yeah, Chino's a great front man. And you're right, the majority of new metal just has not aged well. But you listen to a record like this and you don't feel embarrassed. It's like, yeah, this is actually really good. Here are guys who, they've got a little bit more about them. It's not just, oh, mummy hit me when I was 5 because apparently she didn't like the way I was dressing. Oh, come on, John, get over it, dude. With the Deftones, it feels like you're not cringing all these
Right.
years later. So yeah, solid choice, dude.
Cool.
Cool, man. All right, well, let's get a little bit weird. And I've gone with the band Earth and their album Phase 3 Thrones and Dominions. So Earth can be seen as the godfathers of what's now known as drone doom. And whilst I like Sano, I have to say for me, Earth just always did it a lot more effectively. The album before this was, of course, Earth 2, which is the starting point for this whole thing. But I think Phase 3 is quite an interesting record. It's a transitional period. I know Dylan Carlson had, let's say, a few issues with substances, to say the least. He had just lost his best friend, Kurt Cobain, at the time. So it was kind of made at a point of great turmoil. And I feel like this and its follow-up, Pentastar, get a little bit overlooked because obviously he probably wasn't quite functioning on all cylinders. But the record itself is as you would expect. I mean, the opening track, Harvey, is just this wondrous, like heavy Sabbathian, swirls of noise, and then you got like monstrous tracks like Thrones and Dominions and Phase 3 itself. So yeah, it kind of got a little bit mixed reviews at that point, but for me, it's always been a record that I feel should get a little bit more attention. Of course, we know them now. They've released some superb records in recent years, but at this point, it was signed to Sub Pop, and I do think, yeah, if you're listening to this show, folks, check it out. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
Right. I've never really spent much time with the early stuff.
Sure.
I mean, now, like you said, they're probably gonna little headline places like Roadburn, but
Yeah,
95, they were still pretty underground. So, you
that's
know,
right, man.
good
Absolutely.
stuff to dig back into.
Yeah, I mean, if you're expecting it to be of the quality of, say, Full Upon Her Burning Lips, then yeah, it's not quite at that level, but it's still a worthwhile record, and I especially recommend you the track Harvey, which is the opener. It's just a really cool, as I say, very Sabbathy um, sort of sound, I guess. I mean, they were named after Black Sabbath's original name, so
Hmm.
it seems quite appropriate.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, I will wrap mine up with a band who had a got their start off as like a sludgy crust punk band, and by the time this album came out, they were almost like heavy metal disco. But it's still, it's an album that I like. It's fun and I like putting it on, and that's Astro Creep by White Zombie.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool.
I mean, that was their obviously More Human Than Human was their kind of like king selling out point, but
Yeah.
um, people that's the thing. We forget that it wasn't always that way with them. And that
No.
if you,
Boys rock band at one
right,
point.
yeah, if you like listen to their early stuff, like, you know, it is totally different. So that was a weird band to take a journey on with where they went from seeing them all the time on MTV to from the underground. So, but I can appreciate it. I mean, I like KMFDM, so I was okay with this album. And
Yeah.
it was fun.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It was a huge amount of fun, actually. And if you want to have a good laugh, um, I recommend going over to Mark Dutram, who was the bassist in the Melvins, YouTube channel where he talks about when the Melvins played with White Zombie and the fact that they found sort of Rob Zombie to be a bit of a prima donna, to say the least. But he'll be able to elaborate a lot further and articulate those stories a lot better than I. And plus, he'll have more time as well. And he talks about how White Zombie, he basically described them as basically different variations of the immigrant song, which I did think was quite funny, but I still like their music in any
Yeah,
case. Even this record is it is what it is. You don't listen to White Zombie for, a profound intellectual experience. You listen to them because it's got, thumping, sort of in sub-industrial noisy beats. That's what you listen to them for. And they serve that role perfectly well.
particularly in 1995.
Sure. I mean, I was 16 in 95, so this was, like came along, I wasn't my musical taste. I don't want to sound snobby or anything, but I wasn't quite sophisticated to the point where, oh yeah, I was listening to Swans at age 16. No, I wasn't listening to Swans at 16. I was listening to stuff like this and Faith No More.
Well, you can listen to both. I was listening to both at
Yeah,
16.
absolutely. It all has a place in the grand scheme of things, my man.
Cool. All right. What you
All
got?
right. So, and God, we seem to be of like minds in terms of different genres. So I'm going for an industrial band as well, but slightly different. There's a band called the Young Gods who are from Switzerland, and this is their fourth record, and it's called Only Heaven. And to try and describe the Young Gods, well, formed in the mid 80s, they were named after a Swans EP. They were produced by Rolly Mosserman, who of course played with Swans. So you're getting a theme here. It was industrial, but not in that over the top way that later Ministry or say Fear Factory or bless them KMFDM or White Zombie were. It wasn't that kind of like pummeling riffs and like dance beats. This was kind of a little bit more textural, a bit more organic, a bit of ambient stuff in there as well. And I think they have fans such as David Bowie and Mike Patton. I know Patton's a particularly big fan of theirs. And yeah, Only Heaven's such an intriguing record. It's definitely a good starting point alongside TV Sky if anyone's wanting to get into their catalogue. And whilst I appreciate Ministry and their latest stuff, well, to a point, this is kind of more my level. It just feels a little bit more like it's not quite as hooky, but it feels ultimately a little bit more satisfying and rewarding when you're listening to it. So
Yeah, I would say for me, Young Gods have always been like a cross between Killing Joke and Psychic TV. If you like
brilliant. Yeah.
blended what they do, it would come out. And they have a new album that came out this year called Appear Disappear.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard that one, it's worth checking out.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes it's easy to lose track a little bit. So I'll
yeah, I
definitely
mean,
pick
for
that one.
me, they've always, and I think the great artists always do this, they've
Mm.
maintained. I can't say, well, there's a, oh, that one time that Young Gods went through that period and they put out that shitty album. I don't recall that period. So I will say that,
Yeah.
they've held up pretty well. They never really, they're not as into metal as Ministry.
No.
And you can hear that on this new album that it kind of skirts. It's like, is it industrial? Is it just an electronic album? You can
Yeah.
hear that there's not, sometimes it's not too far removed from Peter Gabriel in places.
And that's what I really like about them because sometimes, although I appreciate the use of guitar in this kind of music, uh, I sometimes feel like, especially with Ministry's 2003 to not including the squirrely years, that sometimes the guitars sort of overwhelm everything and it just becomes a bit okay, Al, yeah, and you're just sticking the odd sample in. Okay, fair enough. Whereas for me, Young Gods are just doing something that's they're using guitars in a cleverer way. It's not just like, well, this is just a thrash album and that's it. They're just like, bits of guitar here or there, but that's not the main focus. And plus, I don't go on and on and on about the political angle either. So that's kind of appealing for me as well. Plus, I mean, they cover Terry Riley in C. They play Kurt Veal. This is these are quite sophisticated musicians as well. So yeah, definitely ones to check out if you want something that's maybe not quite as in your face, but I would say pour yourself a glass of red wine and just kick back and just let the young gods, you know, carry the evening away. That's it.
I think that they definitely are, great at what they do. And, like you're talking about an album like Filth Pig by Ministry. It's just,
Sure.
to me, it's just a metal album.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
these guys are incorporating a lot more dynamics across the board.
Sure.
And not just dynamics in a song, but over the course of the album.
I agree.
So,
And I like Filth Pig, by the way. And I don't
oh
want
yeah,
anyone to
great
think this is
album.
me
It's a
being
great metal album.
snotty. Yeah. I don't want anyone to think this is me being snobby or anything.
No,
But there's a
it's a
time and a
good sludge album.
but there's a time and a place for Ministry, and there's a time and a place for these guys. And
Right.
I kind of see them at industrial. If you know, I don't know if you know that band, Head of David. It's kind
Hmm.
of like of that kind of thing, where there's industrial bits and pieces, but it's not like huge, like people banging on bits of metal, and there's like a ripping great Slayer riff in there. It's
Right.
not that kind. So, yeah, and it's not Rammstein either.
No.
So, there
Well,
you go.
cool. Well, we're about to get zoomed, but we'll see you guys next week. We'll do 2005. That's going to be an interesting year. I'll say that. You better like indie rock to survive 2005. Um, but yeah, 1995. It was good. Thank you for listening.